let's talk outcomes here. And you bring up the idea that because the unions are going into this with the idea of we believe AI is a realistic possibility or AI is here to stay. So we're trying to find that happy medium to use that. But you believe that it should be more of a hard stance where you approach it from the idea that there will be no AI in filmmaking, and then try to negotiate from that position where you're taking a very firm stance. And look, tactics are different for everyone. I've not been actively involved in a contract negotiation like this, so I don't know how that goes. But I do think the risk you take if you go into with an unrealistic initial an unrealistic initial standpoint is that you do not get the other side to move either. They go, well, if you're not even gonna try here, we're not gonna try either. And I can liken it to car shopping, because I don't know if you ever went shopping for a car. It is an awful experience, but
I'm sure.
I recall doing it one time where I did a lot of research on what car I wanted, what the car was worth, what I thought was a fair offer. I went to the car dealership. I pointed to this one and said, I would like this car. This is what I'm willing to give to you. And they said, oh, they do this game where it's like, we don't do negotiations really. We try to give the best price on the sticker because, it makes everybody's life easier. Yeah, every car dealership says that. They all had wiggle room. So I'm looking at this going, look, I've looked at this car. I know that this is not a fair price. Your fair price should be more around here. You tell me, what do you think you can do with it? All right, I'll ask my manager. And they walk off and they come back and they go, I can knock $25 off for you. And I left because I'm like, look, if you're not going to take this seriously, I'm not even going to bother negotiating with you. If we're starting from a point of you're going to knock $25 off, then I know you're not really taking this seriously. So I think you run the risk in your scenario where if you're going to say, look, no AI, that you run the risk that the AMPTP says, look, you guys aren't even trying. So you come back when you're willing to actually have a discussion.
Well,
and that may be right or wrong, but I can see that being the case.
Here's my rebuttal to that, because I 100% see what you're saying. My perspective is that this is the return trip to the dealership where, for whatever reason, you couldn't find a car somewhere else. So you're returning to the dealership because they're the only ones who have this car. So you're like, let me take another swing at negotiating. The roles are just, I think, reversed. Where SAG in the car dealership example is not the guy going to buy, but SAG needs to be the seller. They need to have a harder stance because we've already tried coming to the table and saying, let's talk about it. That was 2023. 2023 was, okay, like, we realized that AI is this new innovative technology. We don't want to stonewall you from using that technology, so let's figure something out. And we got screwed. We got the short end of the deal on it. So now my feeling is, okay, we tried it. Now we need to have a hard line. Now we need to say, listen, you screwed us last time. We need to do something different this time.
I don't know. I don't look at it the last time the same way that you do. Like I thought that where they landed was a pretty realistic middle ground. And again, I think both sides have to make some sort of concessions, and that's what the point of a negotiation is. But just for argument's sake, let's say you're right and you don't like the outcome at all. If I recall, when Fran Drescher was the president, or was the head of SAG at the time, and was making those statements, it was not in the same tone that Sean Astin is doing it now. It was very firm, like, you cannot do this. You cannot. I mean, that publicly, that's how she was. And look, if you don't like that outcome, then I would think that taking a different approach, at least publicly, would be something you would be more open to, because at least it's different and maybe the outcome will be different.
I have a whole lot of opinions about quote unquote optics. So I think Fran Drescher did all the right things as far as optics are concerned for the membership. I think that she said all of the things to make people feel confident that SAG was going in and they were towing the line and they were trying to get the best contract that was favorable for the membership. But then I sat down and I read the contract. So like it doesn't matter what Fran Drescher said publicly. Like it doesn't matter that she was trying to rally SAG, which I think is all of the things that you need to do as a leader. You need to inspire confidence in the membership. But then I read the actual contract that was negotiated, and there are no AI protections. There's literally none. So they didn't get anything.
Well, the union has a professional negotiator.
Yeah,
It's the national executive director,
Duncan
Crabtree
Ireland.
Ireland. And I think he's still the guy that'll be negotiating.
Yep, he's still the negotiator.
I do think that there were some protections that were included. Like I mentioned before, you couldn't force writers to use AI, which was something that studios were trying at the time.
I don't know. I don't know.
There was the WGA and there was this.
I don't know the writers' contract.
They were striking simultaneously, so I'm kind of lumping them together. But there were some AI protections, but I think at the time in particular, it was so new then that I think you had to approach it cautiously because you don't know what avenue is going to take. And one of the things that I am mostly concerned about for this particular negotiation is kind of what I was talking about before, where you put some kind of guide rail in place that just gets circumvented because things are escalating so quickly with AI. That's why I don't think a 5-year deal is going to be a good idea, because you could say, look, I've got it all figured out, and this is what we're going to do with AI, and they can agree to it. And then all of a sudden AI evolves and shifts. And then you're like, we're behind the 8 ball again. And now we're stuck. It is a tall task ahead of everyone right now. And I hope that it's not going to result in strikes again. And we're starting the negotiation process early this year, because I think February is not typically when it begins.
No, yeah, February is right around when they start negotiating. Well, end of February, so I guess early in the sense that they're doing
it's a few weeks early.
February.
Yeah, it's a few weeks earlier than usual, and I think that was in an effort to try to start the process this way it can avoid some sort of strike. But I guess for this negotiation, if it does strike, what does that mean for the everyday person, the fans at home, the industry? What do you think will happen to everybody if we have to go on strike again?
The same thing that happened last time. There will be.
Do you think it'll be worse though? Last time was 118 days or whatever it was. First time a strike had happened since the 60s.
Yeah, I mean,
is it more impactful this time because it just happened so recently?
I'm not really sure I understand what you're asking. Like, a strike is a strike. It means that all of the current projects will be put on hold. You won't be allowed to cross the picket line, so you won't be able to work on any projects that are being run by the AMPTP. I don't think it will be. I think that we will strike, and I think that it won't be for as long. And the reason that I think that we're going to strike is because I think that production companies want to do specific things with AI. They want to leverage AI in specific ways, such as body scans and being able to use digitized actors to fill in background scenes. And unless SAG is okay with that, which I really hope that they're not, we'll strike on those things alone.
But I think that there's potential for this to be more impactful this time, because if SAG strikes again, the industry is still recovering from the last one. There's been plenty of problems that have happened, and the studios also claim that they're still recovering as well. So it could hurt both sides more because of the strike happening 3 years ago. It could also be a problem that if you strike long enough, it could also push AI, and that's my concern too. Like if it goes so long that they're striking, does that say the studios now ramp up their AI push because they're like, hey, we got to do something here, and there's no contract in place? So I don't know what the best tactic is, and I hope that the people that are reviewing this, coming up with a strategy, have considered these different possibilities.
So, wait, actually, that's an interesting point that you bring up that I would like to touch on. I'm not saying that the judicial system is perfect. I do believe in it. And I know that there are people out there who disagree with me, but I do believe in our judicial review process and the current legislation that is trying to be pushed surrounding AI. So I don't necessarily want people to think that this SAG contract is like the only protection that actors have. there's also legislation that is being put in place surrounding AI, and that protects everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, and it
Right.
supersedes the contract. So even if something is negotiated for in this upcoming SAG contract, if a law gets passed either later on down the line or even now before the contract is signed, the law supersedes that contract. So even if it's in
Yeah.
the collective bargaining agreement, they can't do something that is quote unquote against the law. So
But
it's
there's
not
not much legislation on AI currently, and we can hope that things get put into place in the near term
no,
future.
there are consent laws now regarding AI that
There are some.
you have to inform people of AI use, and you have to get consent if you're going to be using somebody's data or information when you're feeding it to generative AI models. And these things are evolving. They're definitely not robust laws, or not what I would call robust laws, but there are protections that are
But
arising. So the contract's not the be all end all.
but what I'm talking about, like, let's say that the strike happens and it's going on for months again. We had that episode early, I don't know, a couple months ago about all digital AI actors. Does that
Mhm.
pave an avenue for studios to go, look, we don't know what's going to happen with using likeness of other people. We are currently out of contract with the actors. We need to put something on the
It
screen.
depends. It depends on
I,
how legislation
I
pans
don't know.
out, because there are currently lawsuits specifically regarding where AI sources their content. And you've said in some of our previous episodes that you would be more okay with AI if AI wasn't being trained on certain materials and the database
Right.
was sourceable, citable, and actually
And
within fair
licensed.
use.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are laws specifically tackling that are in progress right now. So there aren't any
Yeah.
past laws. So I actually think that those things happening in conjunction right now today would actually point towards the AMPTP being harder pressed to make a deal. Because if a strike drags out and then those laws get passed, now they're really at a stopping point, because we're on
Yeah.
strike and they can't leverage AI in the way that they want. Now, obviously, that's going to depend on how quickly the legal system moves, and specifically the legal system in California, because that's where most of these production companies are located. But you're seeing California is very, very adamant about passing legislation concerning AI specifically. It's probably one of the positive things that I can say about California is they are making a push for AI protections for just people in general. And they're really trying to regulate what these tech companies are able to do.
Which is great. Which is great, but you know as well as I do that California is not the only place the movies get made.
Right.
There's New York, Georgia has got a big push. There's places outside of the country that, there's a lot of filming on location. There's a lot of places
Sure.
in there. So even if, let's say California passes a bill tomorrow, which I don't know that anything would happen that quickly, but let's say it passes something tomorrow, the studios are still going to try to find a way to use the technology they want to use if they think it's a cost cutting measure. So if they want to use the AI, then they just have to, oh, well, we did that in our location in X state or X place or whatever. So it's going to be a combination of things. I do think that law is going to play a part in it, but the contract negotiation is going to be the thing that also binds them to where the law doesn't apply. And it's going to take both of those things to get to a good spot. And I think that this is going to set precedent for other industries too, because AI is a challenge that everywhere is getting faced with. But I think specifically with something like the music industry, how this shapes up and how the contract negotiations work out on AI's aspect on how it affects the movie industry will probably spill over into the music industry. And if too much is given up here, that might be bad for musicians. And if there's enough protection here, that might be a good thing to point to for musicians. But I think that there's a lot of stuff that's going to domino from it because we're at a pretty significant crossroads of new ground. And it's still,
I
and I'm going to
do.
point to again, we don't know what's on the pipeline. Like at this
This
point,
is
anything could be
actually
coming down the road.
This is actually one of the reasons that I believe that there weren't enough protections put in place in the SAG-AFTRA contract because um for those of our listeners that aren't actually familiar with what SAG-AFTRA is as a entity, before SAG-AFTRA, there was SAG and there was AFTRA. And AFTRA
Mhm.
covered radio artists and musicians. And when SAG-AFTRA merged and became one thing, the contracts merged. And one of the reasons that I point to support my argument that not enough protections were assured in the last contract is the rise in AI music specifically. I see on Spotify all the time, you can now just publish AI music and you don't have to denote that it's AI music. You don't need to get permission to make AI music from anybody. You can just make it. And it's already warping the music industry. So, yes, I think that a more robust SAG-AFTRA contract will alleviate some of that, but it's already impacting the music industry in a very, very negative way. It's something like
Right.
80 or 90% of music on Spotify is now AI generated or AI assisted, and you don't even know.
Yeah, that's why I think that this is going to be an important contract. Whatever it ends up having is gonna be important to lots of places. Even the tech industry will be able to pull some sort of precedent from whatever happens here. So I AI aside, though, in general, this affects a lot of people. I mean, everybody thinks about the acting and the writing specifically, but if a strike happens and those things aren't, movies aren't getting made, television shows aren't getting made, that also affects the catering business, the tourism business. I mean, there's a lot of industries that also are contingent upon actors and writers being able to work. And the longer a strike goes on, it affects everybody, and it's not good for anyone. I mean, I think when you tally it all up, all the different industries, I mean, you're looking at millions of people that could be affected by a strike. And again, to go back to my point from before, people think, oh, the poor millionaires, boo hoo. This means a lot for a lot of people. So I hope
Yeah.
that starting the negotiations early helps get both sides to a place that they feel like they can live with. I don't think any outcome is going to be perfect, but ultimately, as a fan, we want to be able to keep getting these stories. And I would hope that we want them to be mostly human made stories and things that we can see the actors that we like and the stories that we love all kind of continue on their path without having to worry about, is it putting people out of a home because we're deferring it to a machine somewhere.
Yeah.
But we got a
We will
while until we
see.
know if anything happens.
Yeah, we will see. We're gonna probably stay pretty up to date on it. I feel like we'll probably do another episode when SAG goes on strike. Because that's genuinely my prediction. My prediction is we will
Yeah.
strike. It won't be for as long, and it will kind of be a formality. Maybe I'm a doomsdayer. I'm just
I
not confident that we're gonna get a meaningful contract.
I'm hoping that it doesn't come down to a strike because the fact that it just happened 3 years ago. I feel like everyone is still recovering, to some degree. And I'm
Mhm.
hoping that that motivates everyone to say, like, look, can we get this done this way? It doesn't have to happen, because to have two strikes 3 years apart from one another, I don't think is good for anybody. So I think it's in everyone's best interest to come to a place where you can meet in the middle and find something that you can live with. So
I mean,
fingers
like,
crossed.
I think that argument though is true just in general. I don't think a strike is necessarily in anybody's best interest, but it is your last resort. It's
Sure.
the only way to actually get meaningful conversation or dialogue. And if the last strike is any indication, I don't think the AMPTP companies are as um, impacted as we think they are, because like yes they lose money on a strike, but as we talked about earlier in the episode, there's a certain point when a strike starts to actually impact a company, and the last strike didn't get there. Like it just didn't. It like
Yeah.
monetarily it didn't impact the production companies. So I don't actually see any real motivation for production companies this time around to come in and have a meaningful dialogue. So and I think that you're right though. I think that the workers were severely hurt in the last strike, which I think is ironic because we didn't strike for long enough. But I think that we were hurt enough where we're really not motivated to strike. So if we do strike, it's not going to be for very long. We're not going to be able to
I
hold
don't
out
know.
for that long.
I don't know that I agree with that. I do think that the studios were hurt as well. I mean, we're looking at, WB's getting sold now. And I mean, I know that's been a train wreck for lots of reasons for a long time, but I don't think that the strikes helped
Yeah,
that situation
that
at all.
predated the strike.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it has impacted everyone. I think the strike hurt everyone. I mean, we went months without new movies, new content, and I am worried legitimately too about theaters if there's another strike and another delay in movies because theaters are already on their last leg. I've talked about before how much I enjoy the theater going experience. I don't want to see
Yeah.
theaters, especially small local theaters, go out of business because, there's a contract that can't happen quick enough. So I think it's in everybody's best interest that we find some sort of solution that everyone can live with and hopefully we feel good about it. Good enough,
Yeah.
at least.
I mean, like, this is one of those instances where I hope I'm wrong. I don't think I am because I'm me, obviously. So I obviously think I'm right, but
I
I hope I'm wrong.
I often hope you're wrong. I just and not because your opinions are bad, I just like to disagree with you. The one thing that I wonder if there's a potential solution that if contract negotiations are going to happen like this always every few years and there's always this disparity between the two sides, do you think there's a scenario where they ever treat this like baseball arbitration does? And if you're not familiar, basically when
I
a
am not.
player and a team so players and teams have contracts. They have to negotiate terms all the time. And if they
Mm.
can't do that because one player says, I'm worth this much, and the team says, we think you're worth that much, or we only have so much money to work with, basically both sides create a final offer, non-negotiable. It is what it is. This is, this is the best that we can do. And they send it to a third party, and the third party picks one of those two to be the way that it goes. So I almost wonder if there was a third party in contract negotiations between writers and actors and studios, and if they can't meet somewhere in the middle, both sides submit like this is what we propose, and they go, I think this is the fair one, or the more fair of the two.
I mean, off the bat, I already have issues with this.
Yeah, nobody likes
Just
going to
because
arbitration, but if we can't find a fair deal, what do you do? Just strike indefinitely?
I mean, like, the thing is, the question would become is, do you think that a strike would ever get to a point where a deal couldn't be reached? Which, if the last strike is any indication, there is a breaking point always. And even though it was the longest strike in history, there came a point where like SAG had to come to the table and be like, okay, we need to make some movement on this.
But to your point, you
And
didn't
it's
like how that turned out anyway.
I
So
didn't.
you didn't think they struck long enough.
That is correct. And but the thing is, the question would become is can you strike long enough and force the AMPTP or whatever entity you're striking against to come to the table in a meaningful way, or will that entity simply find another avenue to do what they want to do? Like that's the danger for the
Yeah.
workforce, for the union, which is if I continue to strike, are is the company that I want to work with going to just find a way to just get around the issue entirely? Like that's always going to be the thing because there's nothing
Yeah.
technically legislating that the AMPTP must make a deal with SAG, and it's in SAG's best interests to make a deal with the AMPTP because otherwise you have a whole bunch of actors negotiating on their own behalf. And we've already seen what that system looks like. That's the
Yeah.
pre-SAG system where the production houses just own everything.
Well, and that's why I'm worried about if it goes on too long and it gets to that point, does that push all synthetic actors like a Tilly Norwood thing does that push that up because now the studio's going to go, hey, this is my time where maybe we cut ties from SAG actors and we find we want to move to AI anyway. Maybe this is how we open that door more. And hopefully I'm not just putting the idea in somebody's head, because maybe
I mean, like,
I hope
it's
that somebody hasn't just not thought of that and they're like, that's brilliant. And then we're the downfall of the industry.
no, I mean, like, I think that that's definitely a possibility. And the reason that I don't think that it's a likely outcome is because you have current lawsuits and legislation that are being pushed through that would make that a difficult avenue for the AMPTP to pursue. So, and that's genuinely why I think that there will be a strike, because I think that if SAG positions it correctly, they can have an effective strike, and it won't even need to be that long. But it depends on how they decide to leverage like the global landscape.
I guess we'll see.
We will.